What's going on in Brisbane? They have one of the most unique coaching setups in basketball history. Following 2 losing seasons under Justin Schuller, he was relieved of his duties and the Bullets announced a global search for a new head coach, where some really interesting names came up. Names like Modi Mayor, Paul Hanare, and Chase Buford were all linked to the Bullets, not to mention their 2 assistants that have head coach experience. Yet the Bullets went with Stu Lash, a front office guy with little to no head coaching experience. What makes it even more surprising is that he was in the head office of the Bullets for the last few seasons and was a part of the search for the Bullets' new coach. Now, to be fair, it was the Bullets ownership group that reached out to him to apply for the role, and when he did apply for the role, he was removed from the panel that was electing the next head coach. But still, it was a massive risk by the Bullets to actually hire him, a guy with no coaching experience. The Bullets saw what happened with Justin Tatum and Illawarra, another guy with no head coaching experience, and how successful that panned out for them. So were they looking to capture some of that magic? We may never have an answer to that. But what we do have an answer to is, how have the Bullets gone so far? And more specifically, how has Stu Lash gone as the head coach? As for how the Bullets have gone, well, they're 1-3, so not great. They had an easy win in New Zealand against a really underwhelming Breakers, and then they've had 3 losses by a total of 10 points. None of those losses they've had their full roster. They lost Mitch Norton early in their first game, they lost Sam McDaniel in their second game, and the last 2 games they didn't have Javon Freeman-Liberty or Casey Prather. So you can understand and even almost excuse those losses. But what about Stu Lash himself? Well, you look at his coaching record. He was the scout for the Denver Nuggets in the NBA, and then he's been in head office roles since then. So he understands what's needed from a basketball perspective. He understands what the ideas can be, and obviously he's good at the scout. But how does he go in-game? That's where the questions really were. And that's where this unique setup comes in, because he's the one standing up, he's the one calling the subs on the floor. But when timeouts come, very rarely is it actually him addressing the team. I went back and rewatched all 4 games that Brisbane have played so far, and I watched every timeout and every kind of end of quarter break and looked at who was actually talking to the team in that huddle. So we look at their first game versus New Zealand, that win that they had, and of the 11 breaks, so the 8 timeouts that were called, and then quarter time, the halftime before coming back on the floor, and then 3/4 time, of those breaks, it was actually Vandy that spoke in 5 of them. So two of the timeouts both did. 2 of the timeouts it was just Stu Lash, and then 2 we never actually saw who was communicating. So 5 of Vandy in the first game. It was 5 and 5 of the ones that we saw in the second game. In their game against Adelaide, 7 of those breaks, it was Greg Vanderjagt doing at least, 90% of the talking. But then you look at their last game against Tasmania, there were no confirmed timeouts where it was kind of just Greg Vanderjagt doing the talking. And it raises the question, if Vandy is going to do the majority of the talking, at least through 3 of the first 4 games, then why not hire him as the head coach? And I have 2 theories as to why. The first is that the Bullets front office and ownership group actually see something in Stu Lash as a head coach. And you can't necessarily fault them for that. I mean, it worked in Illawarra, and Stu Lash is a guy that's been around basketball his whole life, and he's had success in other places that he's gone from a front office perspective. So who's to say that that's not going to translate to being the head coach? And the second is that if you do bring in a new head coach, chances are they're going to bring in their own assistants, and then you lose Vandy and D-Mac. 2 guys that have been with the Bullets for the last couple of years, clearly have the players on their side, and even more clearly know their stuff. So it's a little bit of a trade-off in that you're not getting the elite head coach with the experience that you might get from a Chase Buford or a Paul Hanare, but you're getting a known commodity, a guy that the front office already knows, and who knows the front office clearly, a guy that clearly can be trusted by the club, a guy that knows the league, knows the teams, knows what the expectations are, and is clearly humble enough to delegate tasks to the other assistant coaches. It's way too early to tell if this is a success or a failure, but it's definitely something different, and I think that scares us. It clearly doesn't scare Bullets CEO Malcolm Watts. Here he is talking to Brisbane Radio about the decision.
It has been an unorthodox approach. I do unorthodox really well, so I think I'm very comfortable with the direction we've taken. So look, I expected it to come up at some point. from inside the tent, everything's going really well.
We're not used to seeing assistant coaches take an entire timeout unless it's to draw up a specific play. So while yes, an argument can be made that it's potentially a waste of a head coaching position, let's just hold off until we see how this whole thing pans out. If they get their full roster back together and they still keep losing, then yeah, I'll be the first to admit it didn't work. But if they make the postseason, the apology better be as loud as the disrespect.